All right, hello again. So in this video, we're going to take a look at Adobe Bridge. I think you've probably already seen Adobe Bridge in some other videos, maybe importing, maybe exporting, whatever. But this is kind of an overview and some of the different features and things. So what is Bridge? Bridge is basically an image browser or media browser that comes with Adobe Creative Cloud. It allows you to see images, obviously, videos and other things as well. They kind of let it languish for a while, I guess, and people thought they were going to get rid of it, but recently they've kind of been updating it again, and it's even been getting some new capabilities and things. I like it a lot because it's a quick way to look at a lot of images, see information about those images, metadata about the images. You've probably seen me use it in critiques and stuff for you guys. So just a quick tour of the interface here. Up here at the top, you've got kind of these browse buttons, so it lets you go back and forth. If you go inside folders and things, you can go back and forth there. You can also see favorites that favorite folders that you've used. You also see them here. And you can favorite a folder, for example, and it'll always be in there. And then recent folders too as well. Here's recent files and recent folders and things like that underneath this drop down. This little boomerangy thing goes back and forth to Photoshop. So if I have something open or I'm doing something in Photoshop, it goes back and forth between those two. This button is a shortcut to the command to get photos from camera. So if I click on that, you will see a thing like this, and I'm going to say no on that. That was just a default to say, do I always want to open Photo Downloader? And there's Photo Downloader, which you've probably already seen before. You have advanced dialog where you can see all the different images and things. I think you've probably seen this in another video, but there's a button for that. There's also a drop down up here that says review mode. We'll look at that in a little bit. Batch rename, which maybe you've seen already before, where you can rename images. So that's underneath that button there. This button is open in Camera Raw. So if I select a JPEG like that and I click that button, it will open that image in Camera Raw. So Camera Raw again is an app that is built into, actually, there's a copy with Bridge and a copy with Photoshop, but it's kind of separate from both. So if you open that, if you open an image in Camera Raw, it's going to process it, and it has a lot of great tools for photographers. And there's another video on Camera Raw, so we won't spend time on that, but it's a quick way to get to Camera Raw. Another way to do that, if you want, is if I right click on an image, I do this a lot, and I say open in Camera Raw, and it does the same thing. If you double click a JPEG, it will not open in Camera Raw. It's just going to open in Photoshop, regular old Photoshop, not Camera Raw Photoshop. So if it's a JPEG. If it is a RAW file, let me go down to find a RAW file. Here's a RAW file. So this is a RAW file. It's a .nef file. If I double click that one, it opens in Camera Raw because it thinks you want to open RAW files in Camera Raw, which makes sense. So depends on what kind of image it is. What you're going to see if you double click or not. But usually I just right click on things to open them in Camera Raw. These next two buttons are rotation buttons up here. You can rotate, if your image is sideways for some reason, it rotates it. It doesn't really rotate the image, it rotates the preview. So if I click on this and I rotate it, it didn't really rotate that image, it just rotated the preview. And if I double click it, it will open in Photoshop sideways, but if you look up here, it's not really saved. That's the little asterisk, means it's not saved. So if I wanted to really rotate it, I would have to save it. So it's not really rotated. It's kind of just changing the preview. So I can put that back, and then there we go, just like that. Across the top here, you've got different layouts or workspaces. So there's some you probably have seen. I make some for critiques for you guys. There's one called Essentials, which I use a lot. There's libraries, which is kind of like the built-in stuff that you saved from other apps in Adobe apps. I don't really use that one that much. There's a film strip one. There's one for output that we'll look at in maybe a little bit. And then there's others too, like metadata, keywords. And they're all kind of set up. They're the same windows basically that are in Bridge, but they're set up to kind of optimize different things. So if I go to, obviously I'm in output, and I get this thing where I can make like 4-up prints. Well, I can show you that now. If I drag this there, and I drag that one there, and that, it's like a picture package like you got in high school, right? So you can do that here and set the settings up over here on the right. And then you could open that or save that as a PDF or print it, that kind of stuff. So that's the output module, but these different, or output layout. But there's a bunch of these different things. You can always go to, if I go to Essentials and maybe I change some things, I move some windows around, you can click between right there, like the in between these two panels, and you can drag them around to resize stuff. So you can kind of set it up exactly like you want. You can always go to this drop down and say reset workspace, and it'll go back to the original way that it looked. You can also make your own workspace. So say you didn't want to have this window open, you could close it, and then you can say new workspace right there and make your own. So whatever setup you like, you can make your own setup. Another thing that you can do is you can double click on any of these panels. If I double click there, it closes that panel. And then if I double click over here again, way over here on the right, it comes back. You can also hit tab and it'll hide all the side panels and you'll only get the center one. There's lots of shortcuts and things that you can discover, but it's easy to customize the layout. I tend to do it like something like this, where I'll have a big preview window over here. Here it says preview right there, right? And then my images in the middle, maybe my folders or favorites over here on the right. So folders shows me all the folders that I'm on my hard drive or wherever I'm looking. And then these are filters and collections, which we'll get to in a minute. But once I get it set up like you wanted, you could go to new workspace and make that into a workspace that you like. Or I can go back to Essentials and then I can go back to Reset and it goes back the way it was, which I think that's too small. Let's just keep going around here. So over here on the right, you've got a couple of preview controls here. So one is browse quickly by preferring embedded images. What that means is it will show you the image embedded in from your camera. So you could turn that on, or you can click this drop down and there's three options there: prefer embedded, high quality on demand, or always high quality. Probably this one's fast because it's going to use the one that is from your camera. High quality on demand means if you select like if I change it to that, if I select an image, it's going to show me the embedded preview first, and then it's going to make a high quality preview. And then always high quality is going to always make it, that might slow it down a little bit. So, but that's what that's about. You also get, next to that, you get a filter. So let me make this so you guys can see a little better. I'm going to zoom in over here a little bit. So it says show 1 or more stars, 2 or more stars, 3 or more stars. So obviously you can rate these images, which I'll talk about, but you can definitely filter and just see the images that you want to see, which one maybe we'll look at in a minute. You can also sort the images in different ways. You can sort them by file name, by size, date, color profile, label, rating, all kinds of stuff. So there's lots of sorting capabilities. And then way up in the top right, there is a search field that you can search for stuff. You can search for keywords, you can search for all kinds of things. So it makes it easier to find images. So what one of the great things about Bridge is, and one of the values of it is, if you get tens, thousands, hundreds or thousands of images, it's hard to find what you want. So that's what Bridge is kind of good at. Lightroom is also kind of made for that. So I think that's probably why they started to let Bridge fade away a little bit. But some people don't like to use Lightroom, or aren't using Lightroom, or for some reason they don't want to use it, and so they just want to use Photoshop. And then if you're just using Photoshop, it's hard to find stuff, right? So if you have thousands of images, right? So how are you going to organize that? And that's what Bridge is good at. Okay, so over here on the right, you've got a preview window where you see a large version of the image. There's also a publish tab, which doesn't have much in it. It has Adobe Portfolio and stock contributor. That's just Adobe stuff. You might see more stuff in some of these panels later. They kind of add things in, but for right now, that's all that's in there. Down here on the bottom right, you've got a metadata panel, which is pretty valuable. It shows you all your settings that you shot that image with. So I can see that this image was shot at f8. It must be 1/6000th of a second. What my ISO was, what my white balance was, what my metering pattern was, all kinds of stuff. Here's the size of the image. Here's the file size. Here's the resolution. Here's the color space. All kinds of information. And then down below that, you'll see file properties. You can see when the image was made, all that kind of stuff. There's also down here below, if I scroll down a little bit, there is camera data or EXIF data. So that is more data about the shot. Let me see if I can zoom over here a little bit closer. There we go. So I can see what the exposure was. I can see what the focal length was, the lens, all kinds of, oh, that was an iPhone camera. All kinds of cool information about the shot. And that used to be, in the old days, you'd have to write that stuff down if you wanted to know, like, well, how did I do that picture? But now you can see it in the EXIF data. So as long as that doesn't get stripped out, sometimes it does get stripped out when you export stuff as a different type of file or a different size, that kind of stuff, but usually it's in there. There's also other types of information like IPTC Core, which is for photojournalists to enter information about stuff. You can see job titles, stuff like that. There's also, let me scroll down a little bit here. There's also GPS data down here, audio, video, DICOM, I think, is medical stuff. There's all kinds of different metadata that you can put into an image. So metadata means information about the file, and it's kind of embedded in the file. So that's pretty cool, right? So that's what that's about. As we go around the horn here a little bit, down here at the bottom, you've got some, let's see if I can get this all the way down here for you guys. There are some different controls for how the grid shows up here, so you can change the size of the thumbnails if you want to by sliding that. You can also do various grid patterns. You could do, let me zoom out so you can see that. You can do it as thumbnails, you can do it as a list, big thumbnails, more grid thumbnails, all kinds of stuff. And there's even a, if I can get it to work here, you can see tiles or thumbnails only. So I like to have the tiles or some of the information visible. So I'm seeing like the image name here, the time, the size, and I made the exposure visible too. So that's all in preferences. Right there, if I roll over, you can see that it says 1/1200th of a second. And then you can also turn this on feature where you can roll over the image and see more information. It's kind of a lot of the same information actually, but I can roll over and see metadata from those images, like how big it is, when it was shot, stuff like that. So that's along the bottom. Down here on the left, or over here on the left by default, and we're in the essentials view, right? I have filtering information. So let's say I only wanted to see the camera raw images. So there's only 3 of those. So if I click on this filter, I only see those 3 camera raw files. If I click on the JPEG, now I only see the JPEGs. And obviously if I don't click on any, I'm seeing both. I can also click on dates. I can see only the ones shot on a certain date. I can see keywords. I don't have any keywords in there yet, but you can also filter by keywords. So this filter thing is pretty valuable. It lets you kind of filter down to what you actually want to see. Under collections, this is where you can sort of set up these virtual folders almost. So let's say I wanted to, well, I'm going to come back to that. Yeah, I'll come back to that. And then there's also an export panel, which is kind of new actually. So I think I'm going to do a little video, separate video for that one. It lets you quickly export. This is pretty new, and it's kind of limited right now, but maybe by the time you see this video, it'll have more stuff in it. But so that's what's down there. I'll come back to filter and collections here in a minute. Up here on the left, since we're kind of going around the horn here, up here on the left, you've got 2 tabs that are there by default. Favorites, like I said, you can just add a folder to that, and it'll kind of watch that folder, and you can always go to that same folder. Or you can go to folders and you can navigate around inside your computer. You can also make new folders. So you kind of interface with the computer. You can make new folders inside of there. You can see where a file is. So let's say I wanted to see where this folder is. I can right click and go to Reveal in Finder. And then I'm going to zoom out to see this. Here is that folder in the Finder on the computer. Or I can do that with individual files too. So if I right click here and say Reveal in Finder, then it will open the folder and there's the exact image, the real image. So really what you're doing in Bridge is you're looking at references to images. It's not, when you put images into it, it's kind of like importing, but really you're not doing anything. But viewing them inside of Bridge mostly. You can edit some of the metadata and things, but yeah, you're not usually moving files around. They're already on your computer. So yeah, so how do you get images into Bridge? Well, there's a couple of ways. Up here at the top under File, you can see it says, oh, sorry. Yeah, there we go. It says import from device. That is like if you want to get them off of a card or something. I never really use that one, but that's what that one is. You can also say get photos from camera, which we've already seen. That's the importer, which I probably shouldn't show you again because this is the third time you've seen it. And then there's also another way to get images in, which is the one I usually use. I just drag them in usually. So here's my files that I'm showing you here. It's called Bridge Demo right there. I usually just drag this folder into the preview pane and it opens it. It's kind of the fast way to do it. You can navigate to stuff in here too under folders, but once you drag a folder into the preview pane, it will open up that folder in Bridge, and then there you see all the images, right? So that's a quick way to do that. All right, let's go through some of the menus up here at the top. So under File, you got the usual open with, new folder, new window, stuff like that. You can open multiple windows in Bridge so if you want to have a bunch of windows open. Opening Camera Raw is in there. You can export, which, yeah, I said I'll show you in a different camera. You can also move images. So if you want to select an image and move it, you can do that, or copy it to certain things. You can also place images into apps. So if you're working in InDesign or you're Photoshop or Illustrator and you want to place an image, put an image into a design or something, you can do that right here from in Bridge. Under Edit, you've got things like Find. You can also have Develop settings where you can turn on different development settings from Camera Raw, things like that. You can rotate the image. Some of this stuff is also in buttons, like the rotate image buttons, and there's shortcuts in there as well. Under View, you can view, like we said, different things like details, thumbnails, lists. What you probably should notice here is it says Show Items from Subfolders. I use that one quite a bit. So if I'm in a folder and there's a bunch of folders in it, and when I go into the folder, I just see more folders, you can say Show Items from Subfolders, and it will show you all the pictures inside of all the folders. So you don't have to go digging through all the folders. The next one over is Stacks. So I'm going to show you Stacks real quick. If I go down here, I'll just take these first. Let's say I take these first 4 images, and then I go to Stacks, and then I say Group as Stack, or Command G, right there. What that does is it kind of makes all of the images go under one thumbnail. So it kind of saves space. So if you had a bunch of images of the same thing, let's ungroup that. So if I want to, I can click on that. So I undid that. So let's say I had all these images and they're all really similar, and I wanted to save them all together and just kind of not look at them and see them all individually in this group. I could group them, Command G, into a stack, and now I can drag this thing and I can see all those images. So they're almost all the same, but if I don't want to see them all, spread out, I can do that. I can also click on this little play thing and kind of does a little video. I'm not sure that's very useful, but so anyway, that's Stacks. Another thing you can do with Stacks is, say you are doing HDR or panoramas where you shoot multiple images, right? So here is 3 images that were shot for a HDR image, high dynamic range. So sometimes you want to group those together. So there is under Stacks, Auto Stack Panorama HDR. So if I turn that on, it should automatically turn those kinds of images into stacks. But when I've tried it lately, it's been crashing, so I'm not going to do it. But you definitely might want to group those as a stack, right? So now these are all in the same stack, and because they're all from the same, basically, HDR thing. So if you want to get them out, you can go to Stacks and ungroup, or Command Shift G, or it's going to be a different shortcut on a PC, but you get the idea. And there's some other shortcuts too, Open Stack, Collapse Stack, stuff like that. So that is what Stacks are, is kind of grouping images together to save you a little bit of space. So here's that other stack, right? If I click on it, if I click on the 7, it expands and I can see them all. If I unclick on the 7, or click again on the 7, it collapses it. If I want, I could go Command Shift G, or let's see, stack. I gotta select it first. Then I go ungroup from stack, and now they're all, whoops, gotta select them all. Now they're all selected, ungroup from stack, and now there's no stack anymore. So anyway, it's just an organizational tool that you can use. Up here at the top, go back to the top here, under label, you've got a lot of different labels you can do. So you have star-based labels where you could say, I kind of select this, right? And I can go to label and give it 2 stars if I don't like it. I can also, if I turn this visibility on for the stars here, I can do it right on top of the image, or I could click this to turn it off. I can also do it by shortcuts. You can see the shortcuts here, Command 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's also color-based labels. So if I click on this one and I go to label, I could label this select if I want. Now it gets a red label, which I use a lot to kind of highlight things. You've probably seen that before. There's no, I don't think, shortcut to take that off. So you can go no label to take that off. So let's say I'm gonna rate this, this image of 4 stars and this 4 and this one 4, just so later I can show you how that you can filter that stuff out. But that's all underneath here. There's shortcuts for the stars and the labels that you can check out. Under tools, you've probably seen this before. There's the batch rename, which I think there's a different video for, where you can rename files all at once instead of opening them and doing it individually, which is kind of a pain. There's also the Photoshop menu, which has batch processing, context sheet, image processor. You may have seen some of these before. I could do photo merge to make a panorama. I could do HDR Pro to make a an HDR. You'll probably see that in other videos. But there's lots of different connections to Photoshop, and it basically takes the images that you selected and opens them in Photoshop in that sort of automated tool. Then in Window, that's where you can turn on and off the different panels. Most of them are on already, but you can see the list there. And then you can also get to workspaces. Same thing as you can up here, actually. And then there's a little help menu. All right, I think that is probably good for the menus. All right, so now I thought we'd look at different ways to look at images, other modes. So, and I did forget to mention up here at the top, you probably noticed that is sort of a path bar. So this is kind of cool too. You can kind of see where your images are. So I can see that I'm in the hard drive, desktop, Christmas card, copy, bridge, demo, Christmas card, bridge, demo, copy. So you can click on these and navigate through those as well. So one thing I can do is if I want to see a bigger version of this, you can obviously make this preview window bigger, right? But you can also just hit the space bar and you'll see larger versions of the image. And then once you're in there, I'm just using the arrow keys and I can cycle through those images. Another thing you can do is if I select, let's say I select these 4 to keep it kind of, well, let's select all these. Let me do these here. So I'm going to select all those just by holding down Shift. And then I can do Command B, which is review mode, review mode. So now I can use my arrow keys to go back and forth, which is pretty cool. It's a fast way to look at images. If I want to drop one out, like I think it's terrible, look at that guy. I'm going to use the down arrow and it kind of goes away. I can hit the H at any time, the H key on the keyboard, and you can see all the shortcuts for the review mode. So you can actually rate them here too. So you can rate them 1 through 5. You can toggle labels on and off. You can open in Camera Raw with just an R, just by typing R. You can do all kinds of stuff when you're in this mode. So I just hit H to show that. So if you forget these shortcuts, just hit the H. And you can hit Escape to get out of it. So I'm gonna go through here and I'll hit like 4, that's 4, that's a 4. This one is a select. So I'm just hitting numbers and assigning different labels and things to these images real fast. So it's kind of meant good for going through pictures real fast. Let's say I like that one. I don't actually. Let's say I like that one. I'm gonna rate it, I'm gonna give it a 6, a red label, and I'm gonna give it 5 stars. So now it's got both. And then when I'm done, I can just hit Escape to get out of that. So that's review mode. It's kind of a cool thing that you can do to quickly go through images. You can also do Command L, which is similar, but this is a slideshow. So if I hit H, same shortcut, but now I'm doing a slideshow, if you can see that, right? So I can automatically do a slideshow. So maybe if you're doing a slideshow means it's kind of automatically animating for us, right? So maybe you're a professional photographer, you did a photo shoot at a party or a wedding or something, and then you can select those images real quick in Bridge, hit Command L, and then you'll have your slideshow going here in Bridge, and then your pictures are so awesome that they're paying you and they want to buy pictures right there on the spot. A lot of photographers do that. They will, weddings especially sometimes, they will shoot pictures of the wedding, and then during the reception they'll put up a slideshow of the reception at the reception and start selling right there. It's kind of a cool idea actually. So that is slideshow. That's Command L, and again, if you do that, you hit H and you'll see all those shortcuts for doing that stuff. Yeah, I think that's probably good for that. I thought I would show you keywords now. So down here at the bottom on the right, I've got my keyword panel. And these are just like it sounds. I can assign keywords to images. Some of these are built in. You can get rid of them. The built-in ones, like I don't know who this guy Julius is, but I could right-click on it and go. So all I did is I right-clicked on it and I went to delete, and it's going to say, do I want to delete that? Yeah, I don't know who Julius is, or Michael. I don't know him either. I know a guy named Michael, but I don't think that's him. So you can make you can assign keywords with this panel, right? So this is Haven right here. So right there's Haven. So I'm going to click on the Haven keyword right here, and it assigns that keyword to Haven. And I could say, well, she's also a child. And you can have master keywords and sub keywords. So child and then Haven, and assign that keyword. So it's a good way to categorize stuff. So maybe you could make a keyword for, like they have places here. You could do styles of photography if you wanted to, all kinds of stuff like that. So now if I look over in the filter panel over here on the left, right there, right? If I scroll down, you can see the ones that I already labeled. I'm trying to zoom in here and I'm not getting it right here. So I labeled some with red. So if I click on that, I'm only going to see the ones that are labeled red. Or I labeled one with yellow, so that I only see that one. Or I can go down here and there is keywords. There's Haven. There's one, the child. There's that image. Here's Haven, right? I could also select by that. You can also select by all different, a lot of different things. You can select by color, by exposure mode, by focal length, by camera, all kinds of different ways you can filter your images with that filter panel. And it's dynamic too. So let's say I go here, that one has Haven in it too. I'm gonna go over to this keywords panel and assign that Haven keyword, and it's a child too, I guess, right? And then now if I look over there, down in keywords, it says there's two, and I can click on that, and then there's those two images. Pretty cool, huh? So makes it faster to find things. I can also make, so that's the keywords. I can also, let's talk about collections. So it's kind of similar, but not exactly. So here's collections over here. You could rearrange these these panels if you wanted to, just by moving them around. But here is the collections panel. Let me go and unfilter here. So now I've got nothing filtered again. So let's say I wanted to put these four into a collection for some reason. I can click on that, go to collections, and then down here at the bottom it says new collection. I'm gonna click on that. It says include selected files in new collection. Yes, say yes. And then over here it's asking me to name that collection. I'll say family 1 just to be fast. So there's a collection. It's sort of a virtual folder. You see, it looks like kind of like a binder. So you haven't moved the images, you haven't moved them into a new folder or anything like that. But now those images are grouped together. If you want to add an image to a collection, I'm just going to go back to all the images here. Let's say I want to add this image. To add that to a collection, I can just drag it over here to family, and now there's 5 images in there. If you could see that. Yeah, so you can just drag them in. You can also right-click, I believe, and, well, actually, I thought you could add them to a collection from right-clicking, but I guess not. I thought that was a thing, but anyway, you can drag them over there. What's really cool is this button down here, which is New Smart Collection. So I'm going to click on that. And this one lets you sort of make a collection that will update itself based on certain criteria. So I'm going to say that I want to have only images that have a rating. So I clicked on that and changed it to rating that equals or is greater than or equal to, and I'm going to put 3 stars. So it says any image that is greater than or equal to 3 stars. It says if any criteria are met, I'm going to include all subfolders, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to say save. And then over here it says New Smart Collection. So I'm going to say 3 stars. I think that was the only thing I did, right? There we go. So now, if I zoom out, only the images that I gave 3 stars or more are in there. So there's 33 items. Let's say I go back to my original, all my images. This one I gave 2 stars for a good reason. It's kind of a creepy dude. Let's say I add that, another star to that. Let's see if it changes. So now I'm going to go back to my 3 stars. Now, if I look down there at the bottom, there's 34 items. So I added one because I made that image 3 stars instead of 2 stars, and it got added to that collection. That's pretty sweet, right? So that is collections. Like I said, you can either drag images to a new collection and just gather them manually. That is this button down here at the bottom. Or you can do a smart collection and have Bridge search for certain criteria, and there's tons of different criteria you could do it with. If I click on that again, you can see you can search for all kinds of different things, including keywords. So I could make one for Haven even. So I'm going to keyword contains Haven, and I'll click find, and I'll say call this Haven. I just named this smart collection Haven right there. And then you can see those images are already in there. So it's just figuring that out for me. How sweet is that? So it allows you to really kind of find things quickly. I think that is good on the collections. So another thing I wanted to show you is I'm going to go back. I'm just clicking this back button up here so I can see all the image. Another thing I want to show you is the loop. So if I click on an image and I get this preview, and I can make the preview bigger, right, by dragging these sides over and things like that. But if I click inside the image, I get a loop. And a loop lets me, now these are low resolution images, so I'm not seeing a lot of detail, but I could see, it basically blows it up and makes it bigger. So you click anywhere in the image and it blows it up. If I click out of it, if I click in it again, I can drag it around. So I'm putting it right on her eye there. And I can click on this little X in the corner to get out of it. Another cool thing you can do is say you had 2 images. If I hold down Command, I can see 2 images at once, right? And then I could click here and I could put a loop on her eye. And if I click there, I can put a loop on her eye. So you can have as many loops open as you want. If you hold down Command, sorry. If I hold down Command, then they both move at the same time. Or you can just click on one and have it move around, and I kind of flipped it backwards anyway. Yeah. So I can move those individually around, or I can hold down Command and they'll both move together. So if you have images that are really similar, and like I said, these are low resolution images, but maybe I want to see if somebody's eyes are open or not, I could put it right on her eye like that, and I don't know why that flipped around. Put it on her eye like that, and I can see which one is sharper, that kind of thing. Yeah, sometimes it's useful. And if I click inside of it, it goes away. So that is the loop. That is sometimes useful for seeing details inside the images. One more thing to check out, if you go to camera or preferences, Command K, you can adjust what you see in the content panel, for example. So down here at thumbnails, if I click on that, I can click on that and I can pick what I see inside the thumbnails, what kind of data you want to see, and you have all this stuff you can choose from again. And you can see that I've got the image name, the date created, the file size, the exposure, and all that. and you can turn on, which I just did. Let's go back to preferences. It says show metadata on hover right there. That's this yellow pop-up that we're seeing if I roll over an image and it pops up. It's kind of the same info, like I said, but you can see that it has let me zoom in here. It's got a lot of the information about the image there. So that's valuable too, right? Okay, so I think that might be it for the intro to Bridge. And like I said, you'll see other videos on certain features like the batch rename and things like that. But I think that's good enough for an intro, and I will talk to you again later.